Hi there, my name is Martin Henia and I'm a software tester from Ottawa, Canada, and I would like to present to you now my Let's Test Experience Report 2015 version, this year from Prague. So I'm actually sitting up on the hill looking down over Prague right now. Gampa will be down there, Malá Strana, over the hill there you would see that's Staré Město, or Old Town, and the castle's off to my left, just over that little hill. It took me a little while to find a sleepy spot in Prague that's not overrun with tourists so I can deliver this report. And although I get the occasional stare from a passerby here, this seems to be about the best I can do. Um, but yeah, so Let's Test 2015. For those of you who are not familiar with this conference, Let's Test was my first love when it came to the conference circuit. This is my third year that I've been in Runau for this conference, and it's a very special arrangement and location, the way they handle conferencing. I often hear people say that the point of the conference is conferring, but nowhere is that more true than at Let's Test. It is almost a compound where you are located about half an hour drive north of Stockholm, and it's a very peaceful place. It's a very friendly place. You can come and go as you like, but you're almost guaranteed that anybody that you come across 24 hours a day is probably at the conference with the purpose of learning and sharing, and it's somebody you can certainly talk to about testing and share some of your own adventures. And there is a very good understanding, or culture of good understanding, that everybody has something to share. Everybody has some stories that can teach you something, and I've never felt as comfortable when I first started on the conference circuit. I never felt as comfortable as I did at Let's Test, and that hasn't changed as I progressed from being an attendee to being a presenter to running a workshop. So Henke and Johan and everybody who's involved in organizing Let's Test, again, every year, I love this conference, and obviously I'm going to be back next year, and I'll continue to make a point to try to attend other Let's Test opportunities like South Africa and Australia as they pop up. So, for this year's conference, surely the theme for Let's Test this year was, it was the year of the workshop. We saw a very different model this year. There were far fewer presentations and experience reports, and there are many more workshops, hands-on workshops. And this fundamentally changed the experience. In some ways, it made this conference draining. I don't think I've ever used my brain as much as I did this year, and but it was an interesting challenge, I think, that they put forward to us, and one that it looks like everybody got a lot out of. I've been reading many of the blogs describing the different workshop experiences, the ones that I didn't attend, and it sounds like everybody who was involved in setting up their workshops put a tremendous amount of thought into how can they create a wonderful learning experience for everybody who was involved. So from my perspective, the conference started off with actually our workshop. I was smart. I partnered up with Joanne Perold, who's an Agile coach from South Africa, and for those of you who are familiar with Louise Perold, then yes, that is the other half of the dynamic duo from Joburg. And we had a workshop on testing the team where I think that we've both seen that there's a lot of similarities to how context-driven testing and the Agile community choose to explore learning about a system, whether it be a system of being considered a team or being a system under test. And we were looking to sort of explore with the workshop ways in which the very skills that we admire most as software testers and we encourage most can actually help teams learn and grow together. And I think it went really well. I got some very positive feedback For me, the biggest learning moment actually came from the experience of setting up the workshop with Joe, where 2 hours is not a lot of the time, especially for a workshop. And I was actually quite concerned about how much time Joe wanted to focus on building trust within the team and performing some exercises and getting. We had teams of 4, and she really wanted to make sure that everybody had a chance to get to know each other and learn a bit about each other before we headed into the workshop itself. I was somewhat concerned about how much that would take away from our total time slot, but I've certainly learned, especially after speaking with some of the other people running workshops, about just how valuable that was and how much that contributed to the overall experience. I've been somebody who's been a manager and a leader of teams for a very long time, but I always had the luxury of having very long periods to work on culture and trust and autonomy within the group. It didn't occur to me just how important that was, even in something as small as a 2-hour workshop. And so, Joe, I really appreciate you tolerating me poking at it and asking questions and having my concerns and helping me understand. And I think I learned an extremely valuable lesson there about teams in general. But I'll move on to some other workshops now. I had a chance to sit in with actually the other half of the South African duo Lou Parold's workshop on nonviolent communication. And I've been a student of NVC for a long time. For those of you who are not familiar with it, it's worth looking into. And what Lou did in this workshop was actually quite amazing, because we had a room full of people who had very, very different opinions on feelings and needs, coming from very different cultures. And we ran through a series of exercises which really helped expose, ironically enough, the biggest challenges to whether or not NVC could be easily applied in the workplace only helped better demonstrate the value of trying to identify feelings versus needs and observations and requests when communicating with one another, because within the room we had people who could not see things the same way, and their world models were quite different. I started to recognize a lot of patterns where I thought I was actually being fair, the way I was asking questions and the way I actually approached situations, where I realized that I was effectively applying blame or applying causality when I would ask something or make a request that I felt was being rather objective. So this is, if nothing else, this has given me a new set of tools by which I can examine the words that are coming out of my mouth and give opportunities that have potentially gone wrong a second chance by examining how I'm communicating with someone and taking a second stab at it. Yeah, I highly recommend if her slide deck or any of her reading material becomes available on the Let's Test website, to go have a look at it. She's put a few references in there for some reading material. And I think it's an extremely valuable tool for anybody, especially in the testing world, where we are often the bearers of bad news. We're not, but that's how we might be perceived. Or we only show up when we have the message to deliver that someone's done something wrong. There's some really great tools that you can actually learn to help create a better relationship with the people you're partnering with to build software. I am going to pause now so I can think about a part 2 of this experience report. Back in a sec.